right now. Somewhere in the Persian Gulf, a tanker is threading through a stretch of water only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. It's carrying enough crude oil to fuel a small country for a day, and it's sailing through the single most dangerous choke point in the global economy, a strait where in 2026, roughly a fifth of the entire world's oil supply has to pass through or not move at all. We were promised this wouldn't matter anymore. Electric cars, solar panels, AI-run smart grids. The end of oil was supposed to already be underway, and yet here we are, watching a single narrow waterway hold a modern world hostage, the exact same way it did 50 years ago. This is the story of why oil still runs the planet. Not because we haven't tried to move on, but because moving on turned out to be a lot harder than anyone promised. To understand why oil still has this much power, you have to understand what it actually did to human civilization. For most of history, human progress was limited by human and animal muscle. Then, in the mid-1800s, we figure out how to pull a black liquid out of the ground and burn it for energy far denser, far more portable than anything that came before it. Within a century, oil didn't just power cars. It became the invisible ingredient inside almost everything modern life runs on. Plastics, fertilizer, shipping, aviation, the clothes on your back, the phone in your hand. And whoever controlled that oil controlled something close to leverage over the entire global economy. That single fact rewired the 20th century. Wars were fought over it. Empires were built on it. And in 1960, a handful of oil-producing nations, tired of watching Western companies set prices on their own resources, did something that changed everything. They formed OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, a cartel. In plain terms, a group of nations who realized that if they coordinated production together, instead of competing against each other, they could control not just their own oil, but the price the entire world paid for it. For decades, that worked. In 1973, OPEC nations cut off oil exports to countries supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War, and watched gas prices quadruple almost overnight in the United States. It was the first time the world truly understood. Whoever controls the taps controls the temperature of the entire global economy. But OPEC's grip on that power wasn't permanent. And the story of the last 15 years is the story of that grip slowly loosening, even as oil itself refused to become any less important. Here's the twist most people miss. The country with the most power over oil today isn't a Middle Eastern kingdom. It's the United States. Site index equals 35-1. In 2026, U.S. crude oil production is expected to average around 13.6 million barrels a day. About 16% of the entire planet's supply/site. Site index equals 39-1. A lead of more than 2.4 million barrels a day over Saudi Arabia, the next closest producer. /site. That dominance didn't come from new oil fields being discovered. It came from a technology most people barely think about. Hydraulic fracturing, fracking, which let American companies pull oil out of rock formations that were once considered worthless. That one shift quietly rewired the entire balance of global power. For decades, America's foreign policy in the Middle East was shaped, in part, by dependence on foreign oil. Today, the U.S. produces more oil than it consumes in most measures, a total reversal of the story that defined the last 50 years. But OPEC didn't disappear. It evolved. In 2016, facing pressure from booming American shale production, OPEC brought in new allies, most importantly Russia, to form a bigger, more powerful coalition known as OPEC+. Together, this expanded group controls close to half the world's oil production, and they meet regularly to decide, essentially, how much oil the world is allowed to have at any given time. It's a delicate, tense balancing act. Cut production too much, and prices spike, and rival producers like the U.S. rush in to fill the gap. Produce too much, and prices crash, hurting every producing nation's budget, including their own. And then there's the wild card nobody can fully control: war. In 2026, that wild card became very real. Site index equals 39-1. A conflict involving Iran has put direct pressure on the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply physically has to pass. /site index equals 34-1. Saudi Arabia, unable to export freely through the strait, was forced to cut its own daily output by around 20%, dropping from a record 10 million barrels a day down to around 8 million. /site. Read that again. One geopolitical conflict in one narrow stretch of water forced one of the largest oil producers on Earth to slash its own output by a fifth. That's the reality of oil in 2026. Despite everything that's changed, this substance remains so tightly wound into a handful of unstable regions that a single conflict can still shake energy markets across the entire planet. So where do electric vehicles fit into all of this? Weren't they supposed to make this whole story obsolete? Here's the honest answer. They're working, just much slower than the headline suggested. Site index equals 32-1. The International Energy Agency projects that global oil demand will finally reach its peak around 2029 at roughly 105.6 million barrels a day, before beginning a slow decline. Site index equals 32-1. By the end of this decade, EVs are expected to displace around 5.4 million barrels of oil demand per day. Site, a real measurable dent. Not nothing, but nowhere near enough to end oil's dominance on its own. Why? Because oil was never just about gas tanks. Site index equals 24-1. Starting in 2026, the petrochemical industry, plastics, synthetic fabrics, fertilizers, industrial chemicals, is set to become the single largest driver of global oil demand growth, overtaking cars and trucks entirely. Site, every EV on the road still needs a dashboard made of plastic, a phone charger made of synthetic polymer, tires built from petroleum-based rubber. Replacing gasoline in cars doesn't replace oil and the thousands of products quietly built from it. Site index equals 24-1. Even in the U.S., the world's largest oil consumer, slowing EV adoption combined with cheaper gasoline prices has actually pushed 2030 oil demand forecasts up by over 1 million barrels a day compared to previous projections. Site, not down. The clean energy transition is real. It's just running on a much longer timeline than the optimistic headlines suggested a few years ago. Meanwhile, the countries producing the most oil aren't slowing down either. Site index equals 35-1. In April 2026, the U.S. government reinforced an aggressive domestic drilling stance, issuing directives to expand oil, gas, and coal production, citing energy security concerns. Site, Russia continues pumping near-record volumes despite years of sanctions. Saudi Arabia still holds enough spare production capacity to single-handedly swing global prices whenever it chooses to open or close the valve. Oil isn't losing its grip because the world stopped needing it. It's losing its grip slowly, unevenly, one industry at a time, while war, geopolitics, and simple economics keep proving again and again just how far we still have to go. Maybe that's the real story hiding underneath all of this. We love the idea of clean breaks, the day the old world ends and the new one begins. But energy transitions have never worked that way. Coal didn't disappear when oil arrived. Oil won't disappear just because solar panels and EVs exist. For now, and for longer than most people expect, the modern world still runs through pipelines, tankers, and one narrow strait of water where a single conflict can still shake the entire planet's economy. The age of oil isn't over. It's just sharing the stage, slowly, reluctantly, one barrel at a time. If this changed how you think about the gas station, the plastic in your hand, or the war headlines you scroll past, you already know what to do.